Quiet Strength by Rosa Parks with Gregory Reed. Based on the book Quiet Strength by Rosa Parks with Gregory Reed. Rosa Louise Parks is nationally recognized as the mother of the modern-day civil rights movement in America. By refusing to surrender her seat to a white male passenger on a Montgomery, Alabama bus on December 1, 1955, she set in motion a chain of events that were felt throughout the United States. Her quiet, courageous act changed America and redirected the course of history. She was born Rosa Louise McCauley on February 4, 1913, in Tuskegee, Alabama. She was the first child of James and Leona Edwards McCauley. Several years later, her family moved to Pine Level, Alabama, where she was educated in a rural schoolhouse. When Rosa completed her education at Pine Level at age 11, her mother enrolled her in Montgomery Industrial School for Girls, also known as Miss White's School for Girls, a private institution. Several years later, she went on to Alabama State Teachers College for Negroes for 10th and 11th grade. She was unable to graduate with her class, however, because of the illness and subsequent death of her grandmother, Rose Edwards. As Rosa prepared to return to school, her mother also became ill, so she remained home to care for her mother while her younger brother, Sylvester, worked to help support the family. Rosa married Raymond Parks on December 18, 1932. Raymond was born in Wedowee, Alabama in 1903. He received little formal education because of racial segregation, but with the encouragement of his mother, Jerry Parks, Raymond educated himself. As an adult, his thorough knowledge of domestic affairs and current events led most people to believe that he had gone to college. He supported Rosa's desire to complete her formal education, and in 1934, she received her high school diploma. Raymond was an early activist in the effort to free the Scottsboro Boys, a highly publicized case in the 1930s. Together, Raymond and Rosa worked in the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. He was an active member, and she served as secretary and later as youth leader of the local Montgomery branch. At the time of her arrest, she was preparing for a major youth conference. 4 days after her arrest, the black people of Montgomery and sympathizers of other races organized and promoted a boycott of the city bus line. For 381 days, blacks either walked or arranged their own rides throughout the city rather than taking the bus. Martin Luther King Jr., the appointed spokesperson for the boycott, emphasized the importance of nonviolence by all participants. Following the lead of Montgomery, other protests took shape throughout the country: sit-ins, eat-ins, swim-ins, and more. Thousands of courageous people joined together to demand equal rights for all. The bus boycott ended on December 21, 1956, after the U.S. Supreme Court declared bus segregation unconstitutional. Mr. and Mrs. Parks moved to Detroit in 1957, and she remained active in the civil rights movement, traveling, speaking, and participating in peaceful demonstrations. From 1965 to 1988, Rosa worked in the office of Congressman John Conyers of Michigan. Her husband died in 1977, and in 1987, she began the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development. Its purpose is to motivate and direct youth to achieve their highest potential. Rosa sees the energy of young people as a real force for change. It's among her most treasured themes as she speaks at schools, colleges, and national organizations around the country. A quiet example of courage, dignity, and determination. Rosa Parks is a symbol of freedom for the world.
Fear. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Psalm 23, verse 4. As a child, I learned from the Bible to trust in God and not be afraid. I have always felt comforted by the reading of the Psalms, especially Psalms 23 and 27. My grandfather always influenced me not to be afraid. A very proud man, he was never fearful, especially when it came to defending his home and family. Back in those days, fear was something very real for black people. There was so much hatred toward blacks, especially from the white supremacy groups like the Ku Klux Klan. I remember one day when the KKK came near our house after many incidents of hate crimes against nearby blacks. My grandfather never seemed afraid. At night, he would sit with his shotgun and say that he did not know how long he would last, but if they came breaking in our house, he was going to get the first one who came through the door. He never looked for trouble, but he believed in defending his home. I have seen and heard so much as a child growing up with hate and injustice against black people. I learned to put my trust in God and to seek Him as my strength. Long ago, I set my mind to be a free person and not to give in to fear. I always felt that it was my right to defend myself if I could. I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. When I sat down on the bus the day I was arrested, I was thinking of going home. I had made up in my mind quickly about what it was that I had to do, what I felt was right to do. I did not think of being physically tired or fearful. After so many years of oppression and being the victim of the mistreatment that my people had suffered, not giving up my seat and whatever else I had to face after not giving it up was not important. I did not feel any fear at sitting in a seat I was not supposed to be sitting in. All I felt was tired. Tired of being pushed around. Tired of seeing the bad treatment and disrespect of children, women, and men just because of the color of their skin. Tired of the Jim Crow laws. Tired of being oppressed. I was just plain tired. I felt the Lord would give me the strength to endure whatever I had to face. God did away with all the fear. It was time for someone to stand up, or in my case, sit down. I refused to move. We blacks are not as fearful or divided as people may think. I can't let myself be so afraid that I am unable to move around freely and express myself. Then I am undoing the gains we've made in the civil rights movement. Love, not fear, must be our guide. In these days when people are feeling a different type of fear that is hard to break free of, there are so many new things to be afraid of that were not as common in the earlier days. We should not let fear overcome us. We must remain strong. Violence and crime seem so much more prevalent. It is easy to say that we have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. Many of our children are still going astray, but I remain hopeful. Defiance. So the last shall be first, and the first last. Matthew 20, verse 16. After the 1954 Supreme Court ruling on Brown versus the Board of Education, which designated separate but equal schools for children unlawful, a few people felt optimistic that things would get better. The laws were changed, but the heart of America remained unchanged. One day I noticed a little child whose mother was taking him to one of the integrated schools. From the nervous look on his face, I could tell he did not want to go to that white school, and his mother, she did not know what was going to happen. It was not easy for a small child to walk into a place of merely token integration, where a multitude of white persons had always been taught there should be racial segregation. Despite the banning of separate schools for the races, most people did not react too favorably. They were more indifferent than interested. It was not easy, you see, because the pattern had existed so long. There were still separate elevators and fountains for white and colored people. I used them as little as possible. The more I became involved with the NAACP, the more I learned of discrimination, the acts of violence against blacks, such as lynchings, rapes, and unsolved murders. And the more I learned about these incidents, the more I felt I could no longer passively sit by and accept the Jim Crow laws. A better day had to come. The custom for getting on the bus for black persons in Montgomery in 1955 was to pay at the front door and to go through the back door to find a seat. On the buses, if white persons got on, the colored would move back. The custom was that even if you moved to the colored section and a white person happened to be sitting in that section across the aisle from you, then all the colored people had to move to the back, because you were not even supposed to sit across the aisle from a white person. Some customs could be humiliating, and this was one intolerable since we were the majority of the ridership. On Thursday evening, December the 1st, I was riding the bus home from work. A white man got on, and the driver looked our way and said, "Let me have those seats." It did not seem logical, particularly for a woman to give way to a man. All the passengers paid 10 cents, just as he did. When more whites boarded the bus, the driver, J.P. Blake, ordered the blacks in the 5th row, the first row of the colored section, to move to the rear. Bus drivers then had police powers under both municipal and state laws to enforce racial segregation. However, we were sitting in the section designated for coloreds. At first, none of us moved. "Y'all better make it light on yourselves and let me have those seats," Blake said. Then 3 of the blacks in my row got up, but I stayed in my seat and slid closer to the window. I do not remember being frightened, but I sure did not believe I would make it light on myself by standing up. Our mistreatment was just not right, and I was tired of it. The more we gave in, the worse they treated us. I kept thinking about my mother and my grandparents and how strong they were. I knew there was a possibility of being mistreated, but an opportunity was being given to me to do what I had asked of others. I knew someone had to take the first step, so I made up my mind not to move. Blake asked me if I was going to stand up. "No, I am not." "Why should I stand?" I answered. "Why should we have to be pushed around?" Blake said that he would have to call the police. I said, "Go ahead." In less than 5 minutes, 2 policemen came, and the driver pointed me out. He said that he wanted the seat and that I would not stand up. "Why do you push us around?" I said to the policeman. "I don't know," he said, "but the law is the law and you're under arrest." I did not get on the bus to get arrested. I got on the bus to go home. There was not a plan at all. Getting arrested was one of the worst days in my life. It was not a happy experience because I had not planned to be arrested. Since I have always been a strong believer in God, I knew that He was with me, and only He could get me through the next step. I had no idea that history was being made. I was just tired of giving in. I felt that somehow what I was doing was right by standing up to that bus driver. I did not think about the consequences. I knew that I could have been lynched, manhandled, or beaten when the police came. But I chose not to move. And when I made that decision, I knew that I had the strength of my ancestors with me. There were other people on the bus whom I knew personally, but when I was arrested, not one of them came to my defense. I felt very much alone. One man who knew me would not even go by my house to tell my husband I had been arrested. I mean, everyone just went on their way. In jail, I felt even more alone. For a moment, as I sat in that little room with bars, before I was moved to a cell with 2 other women, I felt that I had been deserted. But I did not cry. I said a silent prayer and waited. Later that evening, to my great relief, I was released. It is strange, after the arrest, I never did reach the breaking point of shedding tears. The next day, I returned to work. It was pouring down rain, so I called a cab. The young man at work was so surprised to see me, he thought I would be too nervous and shaken to go back to work. 3 days later, I was found guilty and ordered to pay a $10 fine plus $4 in court costs. The case was later appealed with the help of one of my attorneys, Fred Gray, and I did not have to pay anything. It is funny to me how people came to believe that the reason I did not move from my seat was that my feet were tired. I did not hear this until I moved to Detroit in 1957. My feet were not tired, but I was tired of being pushed around. I also heard later that Mother Pollard of Montgomery said that my feet were tired, but my soul was rested. She was right about my soul. On Monday, December the 5th, the day I went to court, the Montgomery Improvement Association, the MIA, was formed to start the bus boycott. It is sad, in a way, to think about how far we had to come, even getting to that point. We all felt discouraged with our situation, but not strong enough to conquer it. Most of us just felt the bitterness to lash out with whatever the impulse led us to do. So the people started organizing, protesting, and walking. Many thousands were willing to sacrifice the comfort and convenience of riding the bus. This was the modern mass movement we needed. I suppose they were showing sympathy for an inoffensive person who had been mistreated, but it was not just my arrest or any one thing. Many African Americans, including Emmett Till, had been killed for racist reasons. I was the 3rd woman in Montgomery to be arrested on a bus. There was always something going on that fueled our inner resentment. We probably reached the point where we simply had to take action. Nearly a year later, the segregated bus ordinance was declared unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court. One day after the boycott ended, I got on the bus. A month after the boycott began, I lost my $25 a week job when the now-defunct Montgomery Fair department store closed its tailor shop. I was given no indication from the store that my boycott activities were the reason I lost my job. People always wanted to say it was because of my involvement in the boycott. I cannot say this is true. I do not like to form in my mind something I do not have any proof of. 4 decades later, I am still uncomfortable with the credit given to me for starting the bus boycott. Many people do not know the whole truth. I would like them to know I was not the only person involved. I was just one of many who fought for freedom, and many others around me began to want to fight for their rights as well. At this time, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was emerging on the scene. He once said, "If you will protest courageously and yet with dignity and Christian love, when the history books are written in future generations, the historians will have to pause and say, 'There lived a great people, a black people, who injected new meaning and dignity into the veins of civilization.'" It was these words that guided many of us as we faced the trials and tribulations of fighting for our rights. Injustice. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. John 7, verse 24. I am always troubled whenever I see injustice against any race of people. Growing up in the South, I saw so much of this that I feel deeply that no human being should ever be treated unjustly. I am concerned about any discrimination of any people, regardless of race or other physical differences. Whether they are African, Haitian, Irish, any group of people who are oppressed, race is not the issue in trying to solve the problem of injustice. Before the Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was illegal, black people were forced to pay their fares at the front, then get off the bus and walk around to the side door to get to the back seats. Sometimes, before these paid passengers reached the other door, the bus drivers would drive off. It always amazed me that people would go along with this practice. It seemed natural to me to want to be treated as a human being. The Jim Crow bus system in Montgomery at that time was so offensive to me. The civil rights movement was closely tied to the church in its fight against injustice. People often ask me, why was the church a part of the movement? Because it was the only legal place our people could gather to get information without being harassed or unjustly treated. We could not depend on the newspaper for accurate information. The church was and is the foundation of our community. It became our strength, our refuge, our haven. We would pray, sing, and meet in church. We would use scriptures, testimonies, and hymns to strengthen us against all the hatred and violence going on around us. Most black churches had their origins in the struggle to overcome racial discrimination. They identified with the Exodus in the Old Testament and God's concern for freeing his people. Churches often helped hide slaves who were trying to escape to freedom. Members of the church would risk their lives to help these people. The church has always been a part of helping others. Many of us, particularly young people, need to study our history so we can understand the roots of our movement. That is why I founded the Pathway to Freedom program, which teaches our youth about their history and provides a sense of pride in who they are and where they came from. I have been a member of the African Methodist Episcopal, the AME Church, all of my life. My father's brother-in-law was pastor of the AME Church in Pine Level, Alabama. The denomination became known as the Freedom Church during the abolitionist movement. It was the spiritual home of many well-known black persons in our history before the civil rights time, including Bishop Richard Allen, the founder of the AME Church, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and others. They all were strongly rooted in the AME Church. As long as people use tactics to oppress or restrict other people from being free, there is work to be done. Although we have made many gains, racism is still alive. A few years back, the city of Dearborn, Michigan, passed an ordinance restricting most of its parks to residents only in an area that is predominantly white. It seemed odd that they would discourage our presence in their parks while welcoming our dollars in their stores. That ordinance in Dearborn was just like the hundreds of intimidating tactics we had to fight in the civil rights movement. Of course, Dearborn in 1985 was not Montgomery in 1955, but we had to use the same kind of protest tactics. What we had to put up with down south in those days was so awful that I could not bear to see it happening again in a more subtle form. Pain. It is commendable if a person bears up under the pain of unjust suffering because he or she is conscious of God. 1 Peter 2, verse 19. On Tuesday evening, August the 31st, 1994, I heard a loud noise. When I went downstairs to see what it was, I saw a young black male standing in my living room. I was startled, but I felt no fear. "Someone knocked down your door," he said, "but I chased him away. I'm here to protect you." Then he asked for $3. I told him the money was upstairs, and I went up to my room. He followed me. It felt uneasy, but I still did not fear for my life. When I tried to give him the $3 from my pocket, he asked for more. Then he started pushing me and striking me in the face. I tried to defend myself and grabbed his shirt. Even at 81 years of age, I felt it was my right to defend myself. But the man kept on striking me until all I could do was cover my face. I had never been hit in that manner in my life. I was screaming and asking him not to hit me anymore. I gave him all that I had, $103, and then he left. He could have hurt me much worse, but God protected me. I pray for this young man and the conditions in our country that have made him this way. I urge people not to read too much into the attack. I regret that some people, regardless of race, are in such a mental state that they would want to harm an older person. Young people need to be taught to respect and care for their elders. Despite the violence and crime in our society, we should not let fear overwhelm us. We must remain strong. We must not give up hope. We can overcome. I experience problems and pain just like everyone else. I have learned throughout my life that what really matters is not just whether we have problems, but how we go through them. We must keep on going to make it through whatever we are facing. Many people cannot relate to the feelings of frustrations that we as Black people felt in the 1950s. Here we were, people born and raised in America, being treated as second-class citizens. For many years, Black people accepted this treatment. I always felt torn about it. But just because we went along with it did not mean we would let it go on forever. It came at a time when we could no longer tolerate being unjustly treated. It came at a time when we just had to say enough was enough. It was a long time coming, but finally the time came to demand, "Let my people go." When we stood for all of the oppressed people who came before us and for generations to come. I was fortunate. God provided me with the strength I needed at the precise time when conditions were ripe for change. I am thankful to Him every day that He gave me the strength not to move. Not only did the movement help our people, but it set a model for people fighting for freedom around the world. It has always been very difficult, very painful to think about Dr. Martin Luther King's death. He was a very dear friend of mine. His faith, his words, his commitment to nonviolence inspired all of us in the civil rights movement. When that woman stabbed him in New York in 1958, I was terribly shocked. It was a rude awakening to realize he had to face this kind of danger every day. 10 years later, when he was assassinated, I was no longer surprised that it could happen, but I was still deeply grieved. Mama and I had been listening to a minister on the radio when the newscaster broke in and announced that Dr. King had been shot. We were shattered, and we wept in each other's arms. We as a race should learn to work more closely together. During the Montgomery bus boycott, we came together and remained unified for 381 days, and this has never been done again. The Montgomery boycott became the model for human rights throughout the world. We must learn from the past. The gains we made came about because Blacks realized it took cooperation and determination to make progress in their struggle towards equality. Today, in some ways, we are divided. If we could concentrate on one or two causes that most people can benefit from, it would be better. For certain causes, we are one. For others, we are not. We must learn to look after one another at all times, especially for the causes that affect us alike. No one can effectively fight for justice alone. Things have improved for blacks since the 1955 boycott, but we are still being treated unequally. Many subtle customs and practices continue to discourage minorities and make them feel they do not have their place in a free society. Until everyone can enjoy the same opportunities, people cannot be equal. And I would have to say that many blacks are not treated fairly. I'm glad that segregation is no longer considered acceptable, but the fight for equal rights must go on until we have the same privileges and opportunities as those who are in power. Character. All my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character. Ruth, 3rd chapter, verse 11. If you want to be respected for your actions, then your behavior must be above reproach. I learned from my grandmother and mother that one should always respect oneself and live right. This is how you gain the respect of others. If our lives demonstrate that we are peaceful, humble, and trusted, this is recognized by others. If our lives demonstrate something else, that will be noticed too. From my upbringing and the Bible, I learned people should stand up for their rights, just as the children of Israel stood up to Pharaoh. When I reflect on conditions in the South, I recall that people had become worn out from being humiliated. They were sick of accepting the racial segregation that seemed to be worsening each day. Someone had to take the first step. In that moment on the bus, I decided to resist and take the consequences. It was worth it. I am glad to know this and many other incidents have brought change. Human dignity must be respected at all times. I would have compromised my dignity if I had buckled one more time to the white establishment and relinquished my seat. There was no way I would stop being mistreated if I accepted it continuously. I also would have compromised my dignity if I had resisted violently. Not standing up on the bus that night was a matter of self-respect. Every day of my life, I have wanted to be treated with respect, and I have wanted to treat others with respect. I had expected and hoped that others would feel the same way, but because of my race, I was denied that respect. In many ways, that still happens among us today. I find that if I'm thinking too much of my own problems and the fact that at times things are not just like I want them to be, I do not make any progress at all. But if I look around and see what I can do, and then I do it, I move on. In our struggle, if we are to bring about the kind of changes that will cause the world to stand up and take notice, we must be committed. There is so much work that needs to be done. Every home and neighborhood in this country needs to be a safe, warm, and healthy place, a place fit for human beings as citizens of the United States. It is a big job, but there is no one better to do it than those who live here. Goodness and change are possible in each and every American citizen. We could show the world how it should be done and how to do it with dignity. Role models. In everything, set them an example by doing what is good. In your teaching, show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us. Titus, chapter 2, verses 7 and 8. I believe we should all have people we look up to as examples. I list my husband, Raymond Parks, among the persons I admired most. He was a good man, full of courage and inner strength. Before meeting him, I had never really talked about racial issues with another African American outside of my family, and Raymond, Parks as I called him, was keenly interested in changing the current racial conditions. Although he had almost no formal schooling, he was very intelligent and read widely. One thing that really impressed me about Parks was that he refused to be intimidated by white people, unlike many blacks, who figured they had no choice but to stay under Mr. Charlie's heel. Mr. Charlie was our name for white men in general. Parks would have none of it, and he became active in the NAACP and in civil rights issues. Parks worked courageously for the release of the Scottsboro Boys, a group of 9 black young men who were wrongly accused of raping 2 white women in 1931. They were found guilty and condemned to die for a crime they did not commit. Anyone who supported them had to meet in secret. To do anything openly for this cause could mean death. And yet Parks, along with the NAACP, fearlessly pursued justice for these men. That's why I later decided to name my legacy after Raymond, so that people would know how devoted he was to civil rights and the uplifting of blacks. My mother, Leona McCauley, helped me to grow up feeling proud of myself and other black people, even while living under racist conditions. She taught me not to judge people by the amount of money they had or the kind of house they lived in or the clothes they wore. People should be judged, she told me, by the respect they have for themselves and others. Her advice helped me to do the hard things that I had to do later in life. Mother was a woman of determination who believed in reading the Bible for guidance. She also believed in the value of education and saw it as a way to better yourself. She was a school teacher and had a teaching certificate, but she did not go to college long enough to earn her bachelor's degree. Back then, black teachers got paid less than white teachers, but the money was better than what housekeepers got. One of the reasons I co-founded with Elaine Steele the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development was because I wanted to carry on what my mother so strongly believed in, the educating of our people. My grandmother, Grandma Rose, was also dear to me, a feisty person. She helped raise me to be a strong woman. She set an example of caring and love for her children and grandchildren. She was very strong-willed and believed in discipline. I so enjoyed reading the Bible with her. It always made me feel good. I guess that's why it seemed natural for me to read the Bible to her when her eyesight failed. She died when I was 16 years old. She was calm-spirited and not easily excited. My great-grandmother, Grandma Jane, on the other hand, was excitable and feisty, and Grandpapa would calm her spirit. My family and the values they taught me gave me a sense of who I am. I remember my grandfather, Sylvester Edwards. Because he had very light skin and looked white, he would shake hands with white people and call them by their first names. These acts were extremely risky for a black person to do in those days and could lead to being manhandled or lynched. Although he looked white, my grandfather was hostile toward whites. He was not a hateful man. He had simply been cruelly treated by white people all of his life. And as a boy, he had been beaten, starved, and forbidden to have shoes by the overseer of the plantation he lived on. Too many years of humiliation had given him a belligerent attitude toward white people. His memory will always be with me. While I do not think I inherited his hostility, my mother and I both learned not to let anyone mistreat us. It was passed down almost in our genes. Martin Luther King Jr. set a profound example for me in day-to-day living. He was such a young man, just 26 years old when I first met him at the beginning of the bus boycott. I was 42. I'll always remember the way Dr. King would respond to violence. He used the same words that Jesus said on the cross. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Brutality was to be received with love, he would say. Though I knew we needed to strive for nonviolence, when I saw the brutal treatment some of us got, I had trouble believing it was always the best thing to do. Dr. King was a true leader. I never sensed fear in him. I just felt as though he knew what had to be done and took the leading role without regard to the consequences. I knew he was destined to do great things. He had an elegance about him and a speaking style that let you know where he stood and inspired you to do the best you could. He truly is a role model for us all. The sacrifice of his life should never be forgotten, and his dream must live on. During the Civil Rights Movement, another young man came forth to help black people fight the unjust treatment they were receiving. His name was Malcolm X. He was 27 years old. When I look back, this strong-willed man reminded me somewhat of my grandfather. He was full of conviction and pride in his race. The last time I saw him, he was speaking somewhere. He signed a program for me. I admired the way he had changed his position from one of hatred toward whites to one of building self-respect among blacks. His ideas were different than what many of us were used to, but his strong conviction of self-determination and pride energized blacks in economic development. But the way he stood up and voiced himself showed that he was a man to be respected. During the time that the Reverend Jesse Jackson was running for president, he carried the banner for our people very well. If he continues to do this, I believe he will one day be president. I believe that Reverend Jackson is someone black people can depend on for leadership. I welcomed him as a presidential candidate, and I'll welcome him again if he decides to run. Reverend Jackson made all of us proud during his campaign, and he's continuing to do so today. Faith. Trust ye in the Lord forever, for in the Lord is everlasting strength. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 4. My belief in Christ was developed early in life. I was baptized when I was a baby in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. In those days, they sprinkled us with water like the Catholics did. I was never pressed against my will to go to church. I always wanted to go. I enjoyed dressing up and meeting people. During the service, I paid close attention to the minister's words, the prayer, and the other speakers. Back then, in the rural South, communities were too poor to support a minister, so the ministers would have to travel to different places to preach. This was called a circuit. My AME church met every third Sunday of the month, but on the first, second, and fourth Sundays, we attended services at the Baptist church. Daily devotions played an important part in my childhood. Every day before supper, and before we went to services on Sundays, my grandmother would read the Bible to me, and my grandfather would pray. We even had devotions before going to pick cotton in the fields. Prayer and the Bible became a part of my everyday thoughts and beliefs. I remember finding such comfort and peace while reading the Bible. Its teachings became a way of life and helped me in dealing with my day-to-day problems. My favorite book of the Bible is the Psalms. I turn there for strength when I am bothered. The words are so poetic and full of meaning for me. In one of the darkest moments of my life, when I was 18, I needed help, and I went to Psalms 27, verses 1 through 7. My mother used to read it to me when I was a child. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom then shall I fear? Whom then shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom then shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though an host may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. One thing I have desired of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me up upon a rock. And now shall mine head be lifted up above mine enemies round about me. Therefore will I offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing, yea, I will sing praises unto the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. The message from this scripture does not fade with time. I read it over and over again when my spirits are down. I am thankful to my mother, grandfather, and grandmother for bringing me closer to God by making the Bible a part of my life early on. I have problems just like everyone else. Whenever I do, I think about my grandmother and my mother. They were such strong women who always taught me to place my faith in God and to read the Bible. I remember when I got married, I stopped reading the Bible. When my mother found out that I had stopped, she told me that one should not stop reading the Bible. There was always something new to learn by reading it. On that day, I started back reading the Bible and have not stopped since. The Bible is such a source of strength for me that it is hard to say which scriptures I look at for any one thing. But when I feel discouraged, I read Psalm 23 to restore my soul. The Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me down to lie in pastures green. He leadeth me the quiet waters by. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. During the Civil Rights Movement, we were troubled by hatred. We would pray a lot. One thing we used to keep us going was the moving words of certain hymns, many of which had been passed down from the slave days. They gave us a sense of togetherness with our people. Singing gave us the feeling that, with God's help, we could overcome whatever we were facing. One of my favorite hymns is "Woke Up This Morning with My Mind on Jesus." Another is "I Am Bound for the Promised Land." Often we would substitute the word freedom for a key word of the hymn. For instance, we'd sing, I am bound for the freedom land. I am bound for the freedom land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the freedom land. On Jordan's stormy banks I stand and cast a wishful eye to Canaan's fair and freedom land where my possessions lie. All o'er those wide extended plains shines one eternal day. There God the sun forever reigns and scatters night away. No chilling winds nor poisonous breath can reach that healthful shore. Sickness and sorrow, pain and death are felt and feared no more. When shall I reach that happy place and be forever blessed? When shall I see my Father's face and in his bosom rest? Filled with delight, my raptured soul would here no longer stay. Though Jordan's waves around me roll, fearless I'll launch away. I am bound for the freedom land. These moving songs gave us the strength to keep our dreams of true freedom alive. Whenever we sang them, we knew there would be no turning back. Values. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22, verse 6. Even though blacks were treated as second-class citizens without many rights, my mother used to always tell me that all of God's children were supposed to be free. She kept telling me this over and over again until I truly felt that one day we would be free, because God had meant for it to be this way. So my belief in freedom goes way back to the days when my mother used to sing, "Oh, freedom over me." I will never forget those words. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, weeping, oh, weeping over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, crying over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No injustice over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. These words formed my feelings about being free. They gave me strength when things seemed bad, and they guided my thoughts about what I was willing to do to be free. So when I declined to give up my seat, it was not that day or that bus in particular. I just wanted to be free like everybody else. I did not want to be continually humiliated over something I had no control over, the color of my skin. I am troubled by all the racism and violence in our society. There is still too much of it today. What troubles me is that so many young people, including college students, have come out for white supremacy. More and more incidents of racial violence on college campuses have occurred as a result of this white supremacy form of thinking. We still have a long way to go. I try to keep hope alive. It is better to teach and live equality and love than it is to have hatred. I would like to see everyone living together in peace, harmony, and love, not dwelling on the horrors of the past. It is time to move forward. The Martin Luther King Jr. holiday reflects values and ideas that benefit all of us, not only black people. I couldn't believe there was so much trouble getting it approved a few years back. Now that it has passed, I hope it will help to bring about the ideals of Dr. King and of all Christians for the good of our people and for the good of the whole world. Quiet strength. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 15. Many ask whether I am discouraged in the struggle for justice, peace, and harmony. My answer has always been no. People will need help whenever and wherever they are oppressed. As long as any effort is being made to help others, I will not allow myself to be discouraged. I prefer to have a positive attitude and to focus on positive ideals. If you let yourself become discouraged, then you do not have much to look forward to. My strength has always come from the church. I have always gained strength from thinking about the Bible and from the faith of my family. Church has always been a place where we can turn to God for rest and encouragement. It lifts the spirit and helps us to go on. Whenever I travel, I try to attend a church service. Perhaps my only secret is my attitude toward life. Because I have such high ideals, I feel strongly when they are violated in the world around me. I do not like to see people treated in a way I would not want to be treated. Whenever I see this happening, I do everything in my power to help the cause. People all over the world need help. There is still famine in Somalia, war in the Middle East, the ruins of apartheid in South Africa, and many other places of conflict. And as long as the civilized world allows inhuman treatment to be inflicted upon any people, then our freedom is threatened as well. I have traveled many roads since the Montgomery bus boycott days. Each day along the way has given me a sense of pride in who I am. On many occasions, I was tested, and I had to find my way through a maze of choices and options. But I refused to go along with the unfair rules. Back in the days of segregation, when I went downtown, I walked up and down the stairs rather than ride elevators marked colored. Often I walked a mile from home to work and then back again rather than ride the bus, because the buses were the worst of the options. On hot days when my throat was dry, I walked past the water fountains marked colored and waited till I got wherever I was going to get something to drink. I have never allowed myself to be treated as a second-class citizen. You must respect yourself before others can respect you. There is work to do. That's why I cannot stop or sit still. As long as a child needs help, as long as people are not free, there will be work to do. As long as an elderly person is attacked or in need of support, there is work to do. As long as we have bigotry and crime, we have work to do. This is why I think it is important to tell my story. We have come so far since the days of segregation, but there is always something to do to make things better. All human beings should have equal opportunities. Determination. Be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58. When I retired from Congressman John Conyers' office in 1988, I never thought of leaving that job as a retirement from life. I just thought that I now had more time to do more of my work for the people. Many people felt that I deserved a rest and that I should slow down. I informed them that I was not going to be idle by any means. I do not know how to slow down. I hope to expand my activities. I will continue to move on at whatever pace I can. School has always been important to me, and from the earliest time that I knew my mother was a teacher, I wanted to go. She would not let me go right away, though, because I was small for my age and sick a lot. I got very upset about that until finally I was able to go to school. I very much wanted to continue my high school education when I was younger, but circumstances made it unlikely at the time. At one point, my grandmother became ill and I could not return to school. Later, my mother became ill when I was going to attend the high school connected with Alabama State Teachers College. I chose to take care of her while my brother worked. To me, it was more important to take care of them. They were very dear to me. Sometimes one must make painful choices, but we must think of others as well. I did not give up on my dream, though. Later, with my husband Raymond's support, I received my high school diploma in 1933. For many years, I had wanted to start an organization to help young people. In 1987, along with Elaine Steele, I founded the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development. Together, we began a variety of programs that will help Detroit youth to pursue their education and create a promising future for themselves. I see it as a way of giving back to my people. Today's youth have such great potential, and I want to help them develop marketable skills that will enable them to reach that potential. The Institute offers scholarships for motivated young people and provides courses in communication and economic skills and in political and health awareness. Education of this kind, I believe, will make it possible for them to have a sense of hope, dignity, and pride. I do not see the activity of helping young people as work, but as something that must be done. I have always felt a need to work with youth. I will not give up on them. I have been working since before I was 12 years old. I have never worked because I enjoyed it, but because it was necessary. Now there is new work to do. As I recall the history of racism over the past generations, it brings back memories I would rather forget. But since I cannot forget them, I try to use them to bring about change. By traveling the country and talking about civil rights history, I am not living in the past. I am fighting for more justice. I will keep struggling for freedom and equality as long as I have the strength. It is important to keep yourself grounded in faith. When things are not going the way you want, you must keep hope alive that things will get better. When I refused to give up my seat, I had no idea what it would spark or what change would result. I simply did it because I thought nobody else would do anything. I was grateful that the act inspired others to unify in the pursuit of justice. Youth. Tell it to your children, and let your children tell it to their children, and their children to the next generation. Joel chapter 1, verse 3. I am motivated and inspired by young people and children. My eyes light up whenever children come around. They are our future. If the changes we began in the civil rights movement are going to continue, they will be the ones who will have to do it. The world is not the same as in my early life, but young people still have serious problems they must face in today's society. They have to adjust so much more quickly to a fast-paced lifestyle. I do not think that they are really that much different than in my day, but they do have many more distractions, such as video games, MTV, and greater peer pressure. I remember the run-ins I had with white children as a girl. In most cases, they just called me names, but some were much worse. It was not that the white kids meant to be cruel, but they had been indoctrinated with those types of attitudes by the adults around them. It is important for us to bring up our youngsters in a home without prejudice and hatred. Too many of today's youth do not know who they are or where they have been, and as a result, they don't know where they are going. Too many are not staying in school and taking advantage of the opportunities a good education can provide. They are not motivated to learn what is necessary to be good citizens, get good jobs, or to start their own businesses. There is nothing wrong with these young people. We must help them. It is our job to show them the way, to teach them values, to prepare them for the future, and to set goals. One thing we need to do is to tell young people about our struggles for civil rights. I think they sometimes have difficulty separating fact from fiction when it comes to our history. It's important that they hear how things were and what some of us had to go through before them. Many of them do not appreciate the suffering their ancestors have endured to bring them the degree of freedom they now enjoy. They must be reminded that many people have died so that they can have what they have now. Racism is still alive and will stay with us as long as we allow it. But we can teach our youth to continue the effort and not lose the gains we have achieved. We can show them how opportunities come along and how individuals today can still bring about change. We must teach our children to prepare for the future, how to set goals for their lives and for their careers. We must do more to inspire, train, and motivate them. They need effective role models to help them develop strength of character. They should be taught to understand the differences between knowledge, feeling, and behavior. Rather than be so hard on them, We should instead set an example for them to follow. Here are 7 keys we can use. Number 1, treating all youth with love and respect, setting good examples for them, supporting social behavior, and correcting negative behavior. Number 2, helping all young people to know one another as persons and to respect and care about one another. Number 3, teaching values by using the rich content of history, literature, and the Bible. Number 4, showing young people how to develop the ability to work hard and to do the best that they can do. Number 5, encouraging youth to work together so that they can see the value of cooperating with others for a common good. Number 6, guiding young people in experiences that show them how to solve problems without conflict and force. And number 7, providing opportunities for youth to perform school, home, and community services. If we can set the example in our homes and communities, we can save our children. I have faith in what the good people of this country have done in the past and can do today. What message would I have for young people today of any race? Work hard. Do not be discouraged. And in everything you do, try to make our country and the world a better place for us all. You are among my treasured friends and this country's most treasured possessions. You are our future. I see your energy as a real force for change, but you must know who you are, where you are, and where you have been, so that you will know where you are going. Once you know this, then you will be on the pathway to freedom. Do not forget to exercise self-control, nurture your spiritual life, and remain health-conscious. Stay away from drugs and alcohol, or else your mind and your body will not be free. And remember, no matter what the circumstances are, it is best to pursue behavior that is above reproach, because then you will be respected for your actions. The future. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Proverbs 29, verse 18. I want to be remembered as a person who stood up to injustice, who wanted a better world for young people, and most of all, I want to be remembered as a person who wanted to be free and wanted others to be free. And my fight will continue as long as people are being oppressed. Looking back on that day, December 1955, I feel proud of the progress we have made. The number of black mayors in this country has soared from 6 to more than 300. Black elected officials have increased from 300 to 5,000, but we still have many differences to reconcile. I would like to see us put the past behind us and live in peace and harmony. We must all work toward being free. I have been truly blessed over the years, and I'm very thankful that I have been spared to see this day. I am always grateful for each day God has given me. I have learned that in order to bring about change, one must take the first step, or else it will not be done. Despite our gains, discrimination is still very much at work in this country. Despite the efforts of those committed to bring about social justice in America, barriers to equal opportunity have not been broken down. But that has not caused me to become discouraged. We need to continue the struggle to realize our goal of equality, the dream of which Dr. King spoke, one that should be held by all, has yet to be realized, so the movement continues. Back in the days of segregation, we did not have any of what they called civil rights. All we could do is to try to survive from one day to the next. Today we have a modern civil rights movement. We must keep it alive. I am still hopeful for progress. I think positive. It is important that people do not become comfortable with the gains we have made in the last 40 years. Things have gotten better, but our freedom is threatened every time one of our young is killed by another child, every time an elderly is violated in his or her home, every time a person gets stopped and beaten by the police because of the color of his or her skin. Until these wrongs and others are dealt with, the movement must live on. I still believe there can be a day when we will have true freedom, a day when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, to quote Dr. King, a day when we can all get along regardless of our race. This is not a dream. It is alive within the ability of us all. My message to the world is that we must come together and live as one. There is only one world, and yet we as a people have treated the world as if it were divided. We cannot allow the gains we have made to erode. Although we have a long way to go, I do believe that we can achieve Dr. King's dream of a better world. From time to time, I catch a glimpse of that world. I can see a world where children do not learn hatred in their home. I can see a world where mothers and fathers have the last and most important word. I can see a world in which one respects the rights of one's neighbors. I can see a world in which all adults protect the innocence of children. I can see a world in which people do not call each other names based on skin color. I can see a world free of acts of violence. I can see a world in which people of all races and all religions work together to improve the quality of life for everyone. I can see this world because it exists today in small pockets of this country, in a small pocket of everyone's heart. If we will look to God and work together, not only here, but everywhere, then others will see this world too and help to make it a reality.
You have been listening to Quiet Strength by Rosa Parks with Gregory Reed. Based on the book Quiet Strength, 1994, by Rosa Parks,